All right, welcome to Digital Art. We're going to deal with our first exercise today. We're going to analyze the basic shapes of a character, not our own character. So the beauty of raster images is that they're digitally available everywhere. It used to be that artists and illustrators, when they wanted to find reference, had to keep their own morgues, what we called morgues, just files and files of newspaper clippings and photographs. And if we wanted to find bunny rabbit night, we would look at our bunny reference, we would look at our armor reference, and we would try to put them together, right? But with online image data banks, there's just plenty for us to find. So we're mostly going to use Google Images because it has some really nice search functions. And I'm going to use this character. Now, notice that we're going to have a wide range of image qualities in these image results. For instance, this one is 480 pixels by 500 pixels, and that's the grid of colored squares that make up this image. Whereas the one I am doing is 588 pixels by 634 pixels. If I go to View Image and I zoom in on that, you'll see that those pixels make everything pretty soft. Because that's a good size for a web design, but it's a very poor size for printing. Why I like Google Image Search is that I can go to Search Tools here, and this is the most helpful one, I can search by size, and I can say, well, give me results that are bigger than 10 megapixels, which is images that are at least 3,648 pixels by 2,736 pixels. And this will basically print on a regular letter-sized piece of paper at a resolution that's high enough that you can't see the dots. So if I view this image and I zoom in, I have to get really close to start seeing the pixels. And a high enough quality image is going to be about 4 times the size of a regular screen. Which is why you're not going to find a ton of them online, because why would you use an image that's 4 times bigger than you need it to be as a website image, right? Now for this project, I don't care what size your reference is, because we are not going to be using those pixels. We're just going to be referencing these pixels. So there's a big difference. Referencing is like looking at a photograph in a library book and doing your own art inspired by it. Compositing, which will be our first assignment, is finding images online that are high enough pixel counts, 10 megapixels or better, that they will print cleanly, and then using those pixels and arranging them in our own way. So that's like not looking at the photo in the book, but actually cutting the photo out of the book and arranging it with other photos and making our own composition. So how do we save images? Well, this is what I prefer, and this is a good work process that you might consider. I right-click on it, and I open it in a new tab. And so that allows me to keep searching, and I might find other things I like. I could also open this one in a new tab. And then I can just go through them and see these images as they are. Now, in your tabs, you can see the full image size. What we do not do is this. I don't take the image from the search results, because that is just a thumbnail. And that image is small enough to fit on their search result page. And in pixel dimensions, it's only 220 by 229 pixels, which is awful. It might even not be useful as reference. So instead, we always click on it, and usually I'll go to the View Image part, and I'll say Open that link in a new tab. And so there it is in full resolution, and it will let me zoom in on it here. Okay, now how do we get it onto our desktop? Well, Macs are easy. You can just drag and drop. You could also right-click and say Save Image As. And I'd like you to do both, just to get used to it. So if I'm saving an image as, we get this navigation screen that asks you where do you want to save things. Now this is a vitally important step. That's why I'm recording this. Whenever that shows up in our lab, we're going to hit Command D. Command D will take it from wherever it is navigating to, which can be some random place, and it will always change it to the desktop. You should also be able to find desktop under the drop-down, but sometimes desktop is so buried that won't even be an option. So Command D will always get you there. And then we can rename it if we want. So whenever we save a file in this class, this doesn't need to apply to any reference files, but to anything that we make for ourselves, you're always going to save it with your first name and then some description of it. So I'll call this my character basic shapes reference. And then we get to see what kind of format it is. So this one is a portable networks graphics image, which is a PNG. And that's fine. I'm just going to keep it that way. But you'll notice that the computer will fill in the image tag after the image. So we don't want to overwrite these because they're important for the computer to know how to open the image. We let that fill in automatically. And then we just hit save. And because it's Chrome, it shows us that it's downloading, but we should then see it on our desktop. Now this is the first shortcut I'm teaching you. Your F11 key. I've made it to all our computers. When you hit F11, it will swoop all open windows to the side and reveal your desktop. And so whenever you save something, I want you to do a visual check, make sure it actually saved, and that you know which one it is. All right. In terms of setting up our desktop, when we're working on something, your desktop should all be clean. If there's anything other than the files you've downloaded, I want you to move those, select them all just by drawing a box around them. And this is whether they're your files or someone else's files. We're going to move them into what's called the Documents folder. So if you look in your doc, yours is more simplified than mine. There are two folders that need to stay there. The one that's closest to your recycling bin, that's called your Downloads folder. And it might have some stuff in it, but that stuff can be deleted at any time, and it's not essential, right? Your Documents folder is where we keep our files. And you're going to create, as we set up, a file to keep your work for this semester. But when there's stuff that's unsorted left on the desktop, you want to move it all down to the Documents folder. And that means the other student will know to find their work there and sort it into their folders. All right. So hopefully now everyone has a clean desktop except for their two little images. Now, why is it helpful to have an image that I named? That's so if it ever gets lost, if it gets put somewhere weird, I can search for it. I can just look up my name and bring up files that have that in it. And it works best from this search because they've made this search a little bit more complicated. So I can bring up files. My name appears in a lot of documents, right? But yours is new to these computers. And so it's a nice safety. Now we're going to learn how to get rid of files we don't need anymore. So the file that I didn't name myself, I'm going to move down, not to the trash can. We're going to try to never put anything in the trash, but we're just going to move it down to that Downloads folder. That's for files we're just using temporarily, we don't really need anymore. This is going to get really filled up, and that's fine. I might clean them out every once in a while. All right, so now we've got what we want. We're going to open this file up in Photoshop. There are a few ways to do this. This is the way I prefer you do it, because it keeps you from messing up the dock icon. So you're going to right-click on it, and you're going to say Open with Photoshop. If you just double click on it, it will open with the preview program, which we will have use for. But preview just does simplified edits. Photoshop is where we do the bulk of our work. All right, I'm going to turn off this little window so you can see my layers. Whoops. Ah, good, it's hidden. Okay, so in the bottom corner, we're in the Essentials default settings of Photoshop. We are going to change that, and we are going to go to the painting settings. And mostly, I don't usually do that, but with this new version of Photoshop in Essentials, I don't like that they're really dedicating a lot of their space to their account libraries. And adjustments is helpful, but we'll talk about that later. So for what we're doing today, we're just going to go to painting. And I'm going to keep all these things as they are. We always have access to all of the windows under window here. And so if there's ever something I'm talking about that you don't see, you can check under window and just make sure it's checked. For today, we're going to look at layers. So right now we have an image from the internet. Images from the internet are flat images. Whether they're PNG or JPEGs or even GIFs, they are always going to be just one layer. But as a Photoshop file, we can add a new layer. And the way I like to do that is to just use the little icon that's in the layer window. It looks like a little post-it. And it can be hard to see through my little transparent thing here, but in the video that won't be there. So I have layer 0 on the bottom, and I have layer 1 right here. Now, layer 0, I'll move this. Layer 0 can be selected, or layer 1 can be selected just by left clicking. I want you to click on layer 0, and then I want you to click on the padlock icon. And that's going to protect it, so that if we accidentally try to paint over layer 0, it won't let us, because that's our reference image. Think of this as taking a picture and putting it on your desk and then putting a piece of tracing paper over it. We don't want to actually draw on the actual picture. We want to draw on tracing paper that we've put over the picture. So once you've locked layer 0, we're going to take this first layer, and you'll see in the icon of the layer that it has a checkerboard. That checkerboard means it's empty. There's nothing there, no pixels. And that's what we want from tracing paper. You're going to choose the brush tool right here. And you can see that whereas before we had to right click, either with your stylus or with your mouse to get all the brush options, in the painting view, all those brush presets are right here. So I can pick which one I want. I want this one. It is a hard-edged brush that's pressure sensitive for size. So it can go thin to thick. Right? And I'm going to pick a color that's pretty gaudy. Something like a red or a bright blue. I'll do a red. And we can just pick that right from the swatches. And then I can pick my brush size with this scale here. And it just depends on how big the resolution is, but you want it to be roughly the circle that's showing is as thick as you would ever want the line to be. Because remember, it's pressure sensitive. Okay, now we are going to trace it, and we're going to use what are called basic shapes. Basic shapes are shapes we all already know and understand. They're two-dimensional shapes. Remember, you drew perfect circles on your ID card? In the same way, you're just going to try to contain shapes. These are the basic shapes. Circle, oval, square, rectangle, and triangle. There is nothing you can't draw in 2 dimensions that isn't just overlapping these 5 shapes. But sometimes it's a burden to have to always overlap those. So I add one. Most character designers and illustrators do, which we call a wedge, which is really, it's made up of 3 triangles, but it's like a wedge of cheese, a triangle with its head cut off. All right. you're going to find your most simple, biggest basic shape first. So for me, that's going to be this